Well, hello guys. I am doing a pretty detailed portrait here. Portrait of a back of a person, obviously. I don't know if that still is a portrait or not, but the lady who commissioned it thinks it looks like her. This is actually my sister-in-law, the model. And here's the interesting situation. As I turn my screen back on. So here's the photo I took of her at her piano. She actually was playing the violin, so you couldn't see her hand here. And this is the painting that I did from that original photo. And this new hand is photoshopped in, and I'm taking the violin out completely. So this doesn't happen very often at all, but put my brush down. But someone saw this. I did this original painting, oh gosh, like 10 years ago. And it was a 30 by 24. And that's the same size as this one, actually. So they saw it, and they just, this was pretty recently, and they just said something like, I just love it. I feel like it should have been mine, kind of, that sort of attitude. And can you make a copy of it, but change it a little bit? So I don't truly enjoy making a copy. I'm happy to do it for the person. That's what they wanted. And yeah, she was very sure that this needed to be her painting. She says it looks like her, her dress, her home, her piano when she was younger. And she sent me some photos of her, and it's true. It could easily be her. So it's kind of cool. And so I'm happy to do it for her, but it is a little bit of extra work because I know that there's some, that she knows what it could look like. It could look just like that, and that's what she wants. But how do I? It's difficult to copy a painting that's already been done. Partly because of that reason, because she'll notice, and I'm sure she'll compare it to that one, and hopefully she'll like hers better, instead of sending it back and saying, oh well, this one thing is wrong or different or something. Hopefully that's not the case. Those are just some of the fears that go through my mind. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, the other thing that makes it difficult is that I've, in a way, already spent my, I've said what I wanted to say, what needed to be said about that subject. And those of you who are artists, I'm sure you can relate if you've ever done this before. Once you've visited a subject, it can be difficult and even boring to do the same thing the same way again. I'm grateful that it's a little bit different, at least. It posed some interesting challenges, and actually, since it was done so long ago, it is it's nice to kind of go back and realize again, like, oh, that's how I must have painted that. I kind of remember, and it's I feel like knowing what I know now about painting, I can appreciate learning from myself. It's a very interesting thing. There's some neat details in here. This is oil primed linen. It's Claesson's number 66 linen, kind of a medium weave. And it's affixed to masonite, just for those of you who are interested in that. I like that surface quite a bit. In fact, that's my absolute all-time favorite surface. Not necessarily the number 66 linen, but that one, or the number 15 or the 13. So just oil primed linen mounted to panel. Okay, I'm gonna actually paint for you guys. This painting up here is far more detailed than I like to do nowadays. And of course I still do detail, but not all over like this. My palette, just as a refresher for those of you who don't already know from my other videos, is burnt sienna, permanent alizarin crimson, and the permanent is very important. Cadmium red medium, I think. Yes. Cad red medium. Cad yellow light or pale. Ivory black. The ivory black has a nice cool color when you mix it with white. It's a nice cool gray. Titanium white, phthalo green, or viridian hue sometimes. Depends on the brand. Sorry, just had a brain block. What is it? Ultramarine. And I don't use this very often, but it's cobalt. So that's my palette. That's a little bit more expanded than I usually use. Typically, I stick with kind of this top row here. These are just for either landscape painting or at times when I'm trying to get a certain color, a certain feel, or when I'm copying an old one that has those colors in it. So I'm working on a few places here. Need to finish this window. I've just scraped in white there. And these piano keys are actually giving me some difficulty. Now this is an interesting place, these piano keys, because the piano keys themselves are all parallel in real life. But in the photo, and from this perspective, they converge at a point in the distance. In other words, can you see the linear perspective happening here? So the vanishing point for those is about here. So if we line it up perfectly, there. So more like here. So somewhere around there. Anyway, you get the picture, right? So every line there is gonna go like that. Can you see that? Isn't that cool? Once you know the science behind it, it's so much fun to be able to draw it or paint it. I think I did a pretty good job of it in this one, in a relatively impressionistic way. But as you get back, it really comes together. Doesn't seem to need much more detail than that. Got a ways to go on this one still. Obviously the piano keys are probably the thing that need the most help. So I'm just going to go straight to black. Mix it with my black and a little bit of burnt sienna that's already there. Since this black is rather cool, I like to warm it up just a tad. Yeah, it's just, I haven't sharpened it to a point or anything, shaped it. It's just to get the paint down. So I'm gonna try to sort of eyeball it. Get these. So these are kind of angle-wise, they're a little bit steeper, and then as I go along here, I would like to be more like that. And a lot of it's hidden behind her, so it's really just, whoops. Just getting that there to the right angle. I'll have to fix that. So this linen is really a joy to paint into, or onto, however you like to say it. You can lay it across and get a nice painterly stroke, or scrub it in a little bit. There's a lot of options for variety. See how I'm just indicating these with essentially just a brush stroke. And yes, granted they are already there, but just perfecting the edges a little bit. And we get back and see if it comes together the right way. All right, before I go on, I need to fix that spot that I just totally messed up. Let's get a nice soft brush here. Dip it into the mineral spirits. And luckily this is dry, otherwise I'd have to repaint it a little bit on that one spot. But I just, oops, come on, focus. There we go. See how it makes that sharp line? So I'm rubbing my finger on it. to get it to soften. And since there's a little bit of brown in there, it kind of comes out a little bit. It becomes more evident. All right, that'll work. The light shining on the piano from above is from these bright incandescent lights. And so there's a very, very obvious yellow tone to them. Let's see if that's a close enough guess. Oops, I'm sorry. It's so much fun when you can get a single stroke to do what a bunch of strokes might do otherwise. That doesn't quite line up with that, but we'll fix it in a second here. Let's go back to the photo and see. That's a dusty screen. The phone isn't picking up how bright it is, or quite the right tone. But you can basically see that it's among the brightest spots in the whole painting, with the exception of the highlights and the window, although it could be argued that that's just about the same, just a different temperature. This is, since I had the mineral spirits on there, I made it a little bit wet, a little wetter than I want it to be. And I think I prefer, in this case, and in a lot of cases, a little drier brush. I feel like I have more control. So I'm just going to go back over that again. Something about that slightly drier stroke feels more in control and feels just more correct to me. I think it's got more power behind it. It's a tougher shape than I thought it would be. And these aren't quite right. Even though it's subtle, this does get a little bit thicker as it comes toward us. I mean, we're seeing it more at this angle, but it's still receding away from us that way, so there's a slight bit of perspective happening. Okay, there are a couple ways we can check this out. The first is to, let's see if you can see this. So I'm just going to get my eye up right next to this and just peer along the edge. I don't know if you can see that. You can kind of see if you get right up next to there that they almost line up. Can you see that this line doesn't quite line up with that lower line down there? So, gotta decide what to do on that. The other way is just to use a straight edge, which would actually be easier. But since I am working one-handed right now, holding the phone camera with one hand, I'm just gonna use that method that I just showed you. So there are some perspective issues going on still. This line up here may be correct, but right now it doesn't look correct because it's not continuing over there. So let's put that in there. I say let's. I'm going to put it in and see if that corrects that feeling there. This isn't necessarily the right color, but just having it in there, having something in there, will help us feel out whether it's right or not. Can you see how this whole thing seems to bend? I'm exaggerating it, but it's like that kind of a bend on the keyboard. So either this side needs to raise, or the middle needs to go down, or both, or maybe that side needs to go up a little bit. I want to compare it to over there. It's and that's the photo there. Remember, that's the old painting. It looks like this could go up, and again, perhaps all those things. Perhaps slightly exaggerated, but that feels much straighter. Looks like this could angle downward slightly. Maybe just be thicker, I don't know. Or both. Let's see what that does. And there's certain things that can be done mechanically, and other things that you kind of just it's a little better when you just do it intuitively. Just kind of find out what looks wrong, and usually you'll be pretty close. Look at that. It kind of comes together already without having to do much detail. So a lot of the key to getting detail like this is to work in layers. So nice, thin, kind of scrubbed on layers. This has been there for a while, totally dry, and I went in with a nice light blue. Doesn't really look like blue though, does it? On here, it's sort of a purpley. And just scrubbed it in lightly, and then made a nice little transition, kind of in the pink family. And it looks like it's always been there. But having that transparent skin tone on underneath, I think helps it look like and feel like real living skin. And then you put the highlight on top of that. Same technique with the dress, the satin dress. And I'm gonna go in here and do a few darker spots around the elbow. And I'll do that right now. I need to do better at keeping my wet brushes separate. Usually I'm better at this, but again, when I'm one-handed, it's not as easy. It's funny, one way I kind of clean my brush is to just get an extra amount of paint on and scrub it off. Almost use the paint as the thinner. It's not a technique I necessarily recommend, but it works. Especially when your other hand isn't free. You see how this reflected light is making almost a halo across there, and then this darker, deep shadow in there is next to that, and I think it just gives it some nice dimension. This might be a little too dark, but we'll see. Now it looks more like an elbow. Perhaps a little bit too sharp though, so I'll scrub it softer with my finger. Okay. Well, actually that's all I'm gonna do. Well, you know what? One more thing. I'm gonna work on this foot. I'm gonna finish off that foot. rid of some of that. Go slightly lighter colored. So now that it's softened, I'm going to put the shadow in. I'll show you what I'm doing. And there's some reflected light in there for sure, but it definitely has a shadow to it. Up close it doesn't really even look like a foot, but from far away you can tell based on where it is that it's supposed to be a foot, but it's kind of an odd shape, isn't it? Really making a soft edge there. This really is so much more detail than I commonly do these days, but it's kind of fun. A little bit relaxing. But I don't want to, let's see, if I was doing my current style, I think I would, simplify the dress a lot more and make the skin be, detailed the way I've got it here, but everything else would be more or less abstracted. There'd be some big brushy strokes around here, but I do like what's happening. I like the effect. Gonna fix a few lines, just make sure this is perfectly vertical. This thing needs some work. Actually, a lot of things need some work, but see this great little candle holder there. It's got some fun reflections. Now, I'll hope it goes as well as I'm thinking, but glass like this. All right, sorry, there we go. Glass is pretty much just a mid-tone, taking up the majority of it, and an outline with a brighter outline on the side with the brightest light source. And then on this brass part, it's very, very similar. I've already got the mid-tone there. I'm gonna do some highlights. And we'll see how close it gets to looking real just by doing a few little things here. Oops. So I just did that, sorry. Wasn't focusing on it. I said I had a mid-tone there. It actually is not. It's not a good mid-tone. It's just black. But so that's the reflection of the warm lights from the interior. And I'll use this phthalo for the highlights on this side. That's too bright, a little too light, but that's kind of cool, huh? Already looks like glass and brass. Now we'll get that true mid-tone local color in there, in the middle. Just yellow and burnt sienna, a little bit of black. Let's see if this is dark enough. Now there are some dark spots on there, but most of it is this kind of halfway realm. You can see that's a little bit too light, but you get the picture. Do something between black and that. So black and burnt sienna plus whatever else is on my brush already. And lastly, we'll get some dark accents in there again, just in places. Not quite black, but I'll soften some of those transitions as well. That's a bit of a simplified version. But I think that's pretty close to being done. Especially for what it is in the painting, it's not a particularly important part. I mean, it needs to be there and it needs to kind of look like what it is, but it doesn't have to attract a lot of attention by having too much detail. Okay, now I will call it quits, I think. Or not, well, not totally. The painting's not done, but this video, I think, is long enough. While I get a piece of paper towel. You might have seen me a couple times nick this highlight with my finger. So I'm gonna have to repaint that, but actually it doesn't look too bad though, the way that it is. All right, well, hope you learned some things. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll get to work on this, fixing that, and I'll refine the shapes of those keys and get a little bit of reflected light on them. Just a matter of doing a single stroke below each of those, the dark shapes to indicate those. But when you pull back, see how they all just look black. So it's going to be a very, very subtle tone difference. A little bit warmer, a little bit lighter, but not much. And they'll soften the edges, and then we'll be pretty close to done on this. So anyway, hope the person who is paying for this will like it as much or more than the original. All right, again, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.